I'm glad to have with me today Dr. Deborah Kerr, who's the former superintendent of the Brown Deer schools in Wisconsin. She also served as past president of the American Association of School Administrators, currently CEO of Lead Greatly LLC, and is campaigning currently for the Wisconsin State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here, Dennis.
Yeah. Well, we have quite a few things to talk about, and the topic of COVID and leadership, comes straight to the top of the list. Mm-hmm. And when one thinks about the anxiety centered around the COVID-19 virus and the reentry to our schools, I'd like to hear kind of your thoughts about what leadership means for superintendents, because you talk to superintendents around the country, and you are one yourself. So tell me something about leadership in cases that's this stressful.
Leadership has never been as important as it is today, especially during this pandemic. And first of all, I want to just say a special shout out to all the district administrators, superintendents, and district leaders across the country who have taken on this responsibility of ensuring that their kids are safe, that they're fed, that their basic needs are being taken care of, because that's what superintendents do. Unfortunately, we've had a lack of meaningful leadership from all different levels, from the state level to the federal level, that has put an increased responsibility on all of our leaders to do what's best for kids and families. The first thing we had to worry about when we shut down our schools last March was that we had to take care of our children. We had to make sure they were fed. And a lot of people don't realize that our schools are where our kids get their meals, that they get the other support systems that help their family to be successful. So superintendents had to figure that out very quickly. And then they had to figure out how to take care of their staff, because their teachers, who are now, I think, have a more profound appreciation from a lot of people across the country. They had to not only take care of the students in their classroom, but then they became the homeschool teachers of their own students, and they had to manage that dynamic that they had never had to do in the past. And then with just the events that occurred over the time that we were in schools shut down. So we had the medical and health pandemic, and then we had a racial reckoning in terms of a racial pandemic that affected all of our communities in very unique and specific ways that we had to adjust and pivot and help people understand that we're working together and how to navigate this new world of change and unknown. And then the third one, as we were reopening our schools this past summer and this August, there's been a lot of pressure from local legislators and community people to reopen our schools, because schools are the economic drivers of all of our communities. And in some, they are either the first, second, or third largest employer of a school system. So I think leadership has been paramount in helping us to navigate this crazy pandemic. This has just been unthinkable. There's no superintendent pandemic playbook to deal with these kinds of issues.
Well, every superintendent that I've spoken with, they're all talking to one another, trying to get the best ideas. And I guess with this being a starting point for a new learning process, what do you think were some of the changes that have been revealed during this crisis, so that as we move forward, those get implemented in a new learning environment? What were they?
Well, safety and security were always on the forefront of superintendents' minds. In fact, that was the stuff that kept us up at night. Okay, those were the things we worried about in terms of, school shooters or unwanted visitors into our schools, safety and security. So then we had to shift our thinking to this global pandemic, a health crisis that there were so many unknowns, no vaccine, no way of knowing what research says about who were the carriers and who were the spreaders of the disease. And so we were all learning at the same time. And so I think one of the silver linings is that we worked very closely with our health departments and our local community leaders. And we always did, but not necessarily to this intensity and to this level.
Sure.
And so this collaboration and this partnership was essential to all of us moving forward and trying to just deal with the day-to-day nuances of these problems and of these issues.
Yeah, what were the reactions of the teachers? I know, teachers have their own families to deal with. Sometimes they have older adults that live in their household, and they don't want to bring that virus home. So what were some of those conversations like?
Well, teachers, of course, were worried, like we all were concerned, and about our families, about the people that we were caregivers of. A lot of our teachers take care of their parents, or they have elderly people living with them, and some of our families do too. And so because we didn't know enough about what the pandemic was all about and how COVID was being spread across the country, we just had to keep communicating. And so I think another silver lining is that administrators became the best communicators ever about helping people to understand what they knew as the day unfolded, because the information and the data was changing every day. And so the important thing was to be able to communicate and be really candid and just say, you know what, we don't have all the answers. We're probably going to make some mistakes going through this process, but we're with you together. Please reach out to us, and we're going to reach out to you. And so all of my administrators in Brown Deer and our teachers, we were basically on call for 24/7 during this time, just trying to take care of the kids, the families. Kids needed devices, technology. They needed access to robust internet. They forgot their instrument in their locker. They needed that, So we all became, boots on the ground, and we were delivering all those things to our students' houses and our teachers too.
So how do you communicate with the parents? Because they're at home hearing the news on TV, and they're thinking the worst. And trying to get accurate and timely information to the parents so they're supportive of your plans. How'd you make that connection with the parents? How'd you do it?
We created lots of opportunities for parents to engage in our board meetings. We had 200 parents on our board meeting at a Zoom meeting in, I think it was June. And usually when you have that many parents show up, it's a bad thing, but this was a good thing because parents just wanted to be informed. They wanted to know what we were thinking. We had to ask them, please fill out the surveys, because your situation is changing daily, and so is ours, in terms of the number of cases that were being diagnosed as positive, and how we were going to take that data and make decisions moving forward. So the parents became an integral partner in this whole process, but we also created websites that dealt just with COVID-19, because we're all learning, well, what is this disease? Where did it come from? How do I protect my family by staying safe at home, social distancing, wearing masks, washing our hands? So school kids have probably never washed their hands as much as they have in the last 6 months. But it's just acknowledging to the parents that they have a tough job and that we're here with you, and to please let us know what your needs are, because that's what equity is all about, not making sure everybody has the same equal things, but they have what they need to survive this situation.
I've noticed in many of the districts that I engage with that several parents, or some percentage, decided to keep their child at home for schooling, but it seems like the tide is beginning to shift. Some of those parents have decided to have their child come back. I guess they visit the school, they've seen all the special precautions you've taken, and they find out that being a teacher at home isn't the easiest thing to do. So have you seen much of a shift beginning, because you've had all these protocols in place now? Have you seen any of that? Is it beginning to change?
Absolutely. As we've learned more about what other countries have done and what other school districts are doing to have school reentry be successful, the research is now showing that children will most likely carry the disease, but not necessarily get sick. And so I really appreciated all the school systems who took a very close look at getting their elementary kids back into school as soon as they could, with a very great plan to make sure that kids were separated, that they were social distancing. And so some of our schools could, I love the approach, the kind of a gentle start to school. So it was a gradual release. It wasn't just like go from virtual learning to in-school instruction, because we had to teach them new rules and how to stay safe. We had to prepare our buildings and our classrooms with plexiglass and other barriers and create rooms for triage in case kids got sick or staff got sick.
Yeah. Wow. You know, when you look back over the last couple of months of everything that school superintendents and boards have had to accomplish, it's just amazing. You know, if you knew back then what you knew now, it might have been easier to get a quick start. But you've accomplished an awful lot in a short amount of time. Do you think you've turned the corner on addressing the psychological, social, and emotional needs of students and adults? You think you've turned that corner yet?
I think we're getting there. I still think there's a lot of concern, emotional concern about the safety of all kids, and it's become very polarized in our educational institutions and our communities. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different opinions about what is safe at home and what do you do to safely get out into the community. And so we're relying on the CDC guidelines, our local health departments, and trying to reassure parents that we can do this safely. There's always going to be a risk of this disease over the next year or two. So what can we do to lower the risk in the most responsible way that people can agree on and be comfortable with? And so we're bringing people along. And I think it's important that we look at the countries like New Zealand, who have been very successful in reopening their schools. They were very methodical in shutting down their country very quickly, shutting down their communities, but then in a very scientific way reopening. And they've had great success with not a lot of cases, new cases diagnosed for COVID-19. So we're learning, and we're learning more about the disease itself. And we are not accepting it, but just understanding that there are certain protocols that need to be done so that we can safely re-enter school and kids can get back to learning, because we're really concerned about not being into that face-to-face learning environment. We're hoping that our kids aren't missing vital standards and learning opportunities that they would have had with us the last 6 months.
Well, as we talk more about the school facility itself, Winston Churchill once said that, you know, we shape our buildings and then thereafter they shape us. So with all the changes that's happening in education, from moving from a knowledge-based economy to an innovation-driven economy, the whole equity issue that has rolled out onto our streets, with safe schools and now the COVID, what do you think teaching and learning might look like to students as we move forward in the couple next years to come? What do you think is going to change in our schools?
I'm excited that this is an opportunity for transformation for all of our schools. We can't go back to doing things the old way or teaching things that we thought were important that don't have any relevance to what kids need to know to be successful in this global economy. So I'm excited that our schools will be able to innovate and personalize learning moving forward. Instead of focusing on content, focusing on learning processes that will help students learn and accomplish their goals. So with the mobility and some of the flexibility that all of our schools are going to have to entertain as this virus either spreads or is contained, this is why we have to create programs that are more personalized and individualized for our kids so that they don't lose ground, so that they continue to work on their goals. Some of the silver linings of this pandemic are that some teachers and kids really thrived in this virtual learning environment.
Yes.
So why don't we take what we've learned from that and make it even better?
Seems like teachers have been given an extreme amount of autonomy all of a sudden because everybody needs to jump in and try to solve this problem together. And also from what I've seen is I'll set parents aside for now, the emotional aspect, but kids have jumped in and really enjoyed this, I won't say lack of structure, but a different type of structure. They've had to get used to it. And I'm just amazed that the teachers and superintendents have just been able to contain the fear, and I see nothing but positive in schools as I go through it now. So you've really transformed the whole learning environment to something that you can learn with all this stuff that's going on around us. And you can actually learn in the facility. So I've really seen an interesting change. I don't know how you can capture that and design that as you move forward, but I think change is in the air, and we just need to kind of keep that ball rolling forward as we plan and design our future schools. The future-ready school, if you will, now has to deal with the next pandemic that'll come in 10 or 15 years, whatever they predict. So if you had a crystal ball and said, you know, in 10 years from now, I want to sit down with my staff and I want to lay out and plan and design the future-ready school. You know, one that, you know, focuses on equity for all students as they move forward, that engages technology, that really allows students at various grade levels to pursue their passion and to explore. What do you think that school might look like? Is it the double-loaded corridor with classrooms going down both sides of the hallway? What do you think it might be? And you weren't prepared for this, I know.
That's
so I
okay.
thought I'd throw you.
It's okay. I love to dream about the possibilities because we have learned so much from this pandemic. So first of all, equity does have to be at the center of all that we do, making sure that technology devices and internet, those are essential tools like paper and pencil used to be. So we cannot allow any child or family to be without. So that means collaborating with our business partners and our communities to make sure that robust internet is available everywhere, because it's not just about education, it's about telehealth. It's about parents running their own businesses from their homes or connecting and working in their workplace positions. I also think that individualized and personalized learning is going to change how we look at schools. Do grade levels have to be in certain places in a building? Could multi-age experiences still allow our kids to achieve their goals? Could looping be something that's really important? I felt so disappointed that we couldn't reconnect with our kids before the end of the school year. And so I think there's some emotional disappointment that the kids didn't get to finish out with their regular teacher before they transitioned to a new teacher. So I think there's ways to overcome that by the way we organize our schools. And I do predict that high schools will look very different. I don't think high school has to be 4 years. I think it only has to be 2, and then allowing students to go in that strength-based pathway that they're really passionate. So if they want to go into engineering, we can create the pathway for them. If they want to go into the trades or manufacturing, we've got business partners who will let them do job shadowing and apprenticeships. We will offer them the opportunities to build houses or work on construction sites. So I think it's positioned us to be very creative and innovative in how we serve our kids in the future.
Well, that sounds like a really exciting future for the kids and for the teachers too. I would think that would attract a lot of teachers to the profession. That's just outstanding. As we look at that future-ready school, I know in last week or the week before, I spoke with Charlie Wilson and Frank Henderson from NSBA, and you know they had the CUBE conference and the Dyer Initiative, and trying to bring equity to education throughout. Do you have any thoughts on how to ensure that equity and education piece is continuously monitored and revised and updated, anywhere from the SRO all the way through the school?
Well, first of all, I think it's important that we all address what those equity issues are in our districts. I think that's the first obstacle or barrier for a lot of districts because they don't want to have that difficult conversation.
Right.
And so we have to approach it in a way, no shame, no blame, no judgment. This is about understanding where we are today and what we can do to move ahead to build a better future for our students. It's creating these cornerstones and non-negotiables of what the accepted practices should be when you're dealing with different kinds of families, different kinds of students and colleagues too. We want to make sure that we are being anti-racist, that we're promoting equity and making sure that our schools truly represent social justice. So one way to do that is making sure all these kids have the devices. I mean, they need Chromebooks, they need laptops. It's just part of the registration process. Maybe they get it like they would get a book from here on out. Nobody has to worry about the one-to-one initiatives because every kid should have one. It all should be one-to-one, right? We have learned how to be really creative in creating hotspots for kids at apartment buildings or on buses or at libraries that give our parents and our kids equal access to technology, because that's the key. We cannot use technology as a barrier to marginalize any part of this educational process moving forward. And then I think it's about coming together as a community and talking about those issues, like where have we come? What are we doing really well? But where are some areas that we could address? Do all our kids feel connected to our school? Are we really building this sense of community that kids feel that they're a part of? And I think if we individualize and personalize the education, we'll see more student voice impacting our decisions.
Very, very interesting. Well, thank you for those thoughts. You know, technology is accelerating at a very fast pace, exponentially. And certainly it's affecting our economy and what businesses are looking for in terms of the skill sets for students. And as we look forward, if our kids don't get the skill sets they need to work in the innovation-driven type economy, then they're not going to be part of that mobility of the middle class raising up. The jobs that their parents have now won't be there when they get out and may not continue to be there for their parents. So no longer can you afford to say it's not cool to learn. Everybody has to be a geek. Everybody has to be passionate. Everybody has to be in learning academies that allow them to, pursue their passion. So do you think in all communities and all schools, we've turned that corner yet where it's now cool to learn, for everybody to learn, and kind of get on with competing on a global stage? Do you think we're there yet?
We're getting there. I'm a passionate lifelong learner myself. We have learned that some people and students were more productive in this environment. So we need to accelerate those lessons and apply them to our individual fields and our careers and to our educational systems. I think learning is lifelong forever, and even adults like ourselves need to continue to learn and grow so that we can pivot and transform our thinking, our thoughts. We might have a second or third career that we might want to go into. So again, there's that second mountain, so to speak, that, okay, what could I do next to either serve my community or expand my knowledge base and dispositions?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for our audience to know that we have definitely gotten off of the original script because I love talking to you, so I'm throwing you these fastballs. Let me throw you one more.
Okay.
I know you hit it out of the park like you have all the others. Technology is certainly fast changing.
Right.
And these days, sometimes the kids know more than the teacher knows about technology. So, and we also know the role of the teacher is evolving and changing. How does the teacher, let's say in fourth grade, come into a classroom with some new software or new hardware and then have to ask some of the students to help he or her with that software? How does that work today in the ranks of teachers? Because I haven't been able to ask, so I thought I would ask you.
I think our teachers are learning as fast as they can. They're trying to keep a step ahead of the kids. However, I think they all approach their classroom as a learning community. And you know what? I'm not going to know all the answers, and neither are you. And so I think our teachers, when they approach it that way, I think the kids are more willing to say, oh, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, I think we should try it this way. And I think that's how we learn now, and that's how teams are going to be expected to work in businesses, in the community. Any of our students who graduate are going to be expected to work on a team. And so you have to be a contributor and a participant at the same time. And I don't think our teachers, the ones I have seen who are excellent teachers, are willing to learn from their kids. And it's not the walk of shame. I've learned from kids all the time. I mean, I have nieces and nephews in education. I text them and say, hey, how can I do this? And they text me back and I'm like, oh, thank you, you know. So I think that's the beauty of what technology has done. It's allowed us to say, hey, I need to learn something new. Can you help me? And someone in the room is going to have the answer.
I know you're going to be attending EdSpaces 2020, the virtual conference. That's just around the corner. Are there any closing comments or additional thoughts that we haven't covered that you would like to share with the attendees who will all be viewing our discussion?
I think it's very important with the transformation of education due to the pandemic and what we think is important for our kids to be successful in the 21st century will require a different thought process on how to design our buildings and our learning spaces. Not only due to the social distancing that has to take place, but to the medical and safety protocols. So I see it as an opportunity to create learning spaces that spread kids out, that utilize the outdoors more effectively, and that looks at the process of learning, not necessarily all the content that has to be covered. So kids need to be able to be in flexible groups all over the building, all over different sections of a classroom. And so I think it will impact our decisions on furniture, how we use the modalities and the technology in the classroom. And so I would say continue to think about the differentiated ways that teachers will be required to deliver instruction. And that should design your new classroom of the 21st century.
Well, outstanding. You know, I just want to thank you for sharing your expertise and the leadership that you've demonstrated throughout this whole pandemic crisis. You know, it's so important to lead by example, and that's how others learn. And I think you've done an outstanding job, I know, in your professional career, and I wish you all the luck in your current campaign to be the superintendent of the year in the state in Wisconsin. So thank you for that. I think everyone who's the listening audience will be able to contact through our knowledge library, Dr. Kerr. Her contact information will be on there, so I'm sure you'd be willing to reach out to those who need some additional advice and consulting. And I would just simply like to say, you know, I'm Dennis Young. I'm founder of Issues in Education, which is the leading forum in engaging thought leaders like Dr. Kerr on what are the most important issues of today. So thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.